What's up guys, welcome to this quick dose of reviews. I'm going to talk all about films and TV shows that I watch. TV shows actually. So let's get straight into it. The Handmaid's Tale Season 3. Handmaid's Tale Season 3 is a tough season, but tough in a different way from the previous two, because I feel like this season has kind of lost its edge a little bit. Or maybe it's just that I'm getting more acclimated to some of the really out there stuff that's happening, because this is all about basically showing people getting abused, getting put into slavery essentially, getting raped and beaten and tortured and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like now, because we've seen so much of it, because there are 3 seasons worth of it, it's losing some of what made it so shocking or surprising, which was how I felt about the first season. But that's kind of to be expected. What's really tough about this season is that it feels like it's going nowhere. And it feels like it's stalling, it feels like the makers of the show don't really know what to do. And the reason for that is because the season starts and ends with the main character in pretty much the exact same situation she was in back in season 1. She hasn't moved on, she hasn't left this community. She feels like she's got very little agency, very little motivations to go anywhere. She's certainly got plans, she certainly intends to do stuff, but she never actually does anything. And it's getting very repetitive and very sluggish, and it's really annoying, because it felt like in the first season they were building up to this revolution, then the revolution never happened. Then it felt like in the second season they were building up to her trying to escape, and then that didn't happen. And now this season they're building up to something else, and yeah, that's something else. Without getting into spoilers, they actually touch on that something else, but the main character herself doesn't really do much. And when there's 13 episodes of essentially their character in the same location, doing the same things day in, day out, seeing the same things, it becomes very repetitive, very boring. It feels like they're dragging it out big time now. There are certain moments in the season where they delve into her mentality, because of course going through this experience would have a big effect on your mental health. And the problem is, it delves into that, it makes her go crazy, and then they just kind of forget about it. Then there's another character. The other problem is that they are bringing back certain characters who probably shouldn't even be in this show anymore, because they've moved on from that storyline. Bringing these characters back feels like you're forcing them in a bit. And yeah, they do have smaller roles this season, but again, so yeah, we should move on from this. And then at long last we get one of the main characters' backstory, and it turns out this main character just doesn't have all that interest in the backstory. One of the best things about this season though is Bradley Whitford. Bradley Whitford coming in here as a new character. He was actually introduced in the end of the last season, but he's here now full time as a main cast member. And one of the reasons his character works so well is because you don't really know what his allegiance is. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? It's hard to say. You do kind of get a definitive answer by the end, and I think they really change his character by the end of the season, whereas at the start he feels like he's very protective of himself and of his feelings and emotions and so on. They kind of break that away towards the end of the season a bit. And very intriguing, very interesting character. That's all I'm going to say about him. Probably the best thing about this season, to be honest. But yeah, ultimately, Handmaid's Tale Season 3, the worst of the 3 seasons so far. I feel like the show needs to amp up the pace a bit and get to the point a bit more, because it feels like it's going nowhere. The main character is still in that community. Obviously, this is all to do with like budget reasons. They can't keep coming up with new sets and locations. They can't keep going out and doing on-location shooting and changing where she is and so on. But they need to do something to change the status quo, because the next season is going to start, and guess what? She's still in this community, she's still one of the handmaids, and what's her overall goal now going to be? So yeah, hopefully they get the move on with this, because it's starting to get a bit annoying actually. The Orville Season 2. So I watched the Orville Season 1, and I didn't like it. The Orville Season 1 is a rip-off of Star Trek, plain and simple, and it's not even a good rip-off of Star Trek. If I were to compare it to other Star Trek shows, it would be one of the worst, if not the worst. That would be Season 1, however, of the Orville. So when Season 2 came out, I was not really up for it, so I just recorded them in the background and watched thought I'd get to them later. So eventually I got to them later, and to my surprise, this season is better than the first. It's not great by any means, it's still a rip-off of Star Trek, still not a good rip-off of Star Trek, but one of the things I liked about this season is they're moving away from like the adventure of the week kind of thing, and it's much more about the characters now. So instead of it being, right, we've got to go here, oh, something happens, we've got to take down this bad guy, we've got to escape or whatever. There are still some episodes like that, still quite a few episodes like that, but for the most part of the season, it's very much, right, this character's dealing with this thing, this character's got something going on in their life, that's what this episode's about. And I like that because it really fleshed out the characters more, it made them more than just like comedic rip-off of Star Trek characters, essentially. Where this show struggles is now that, yes, it is a rip-off of Star Trek, but towards the end of the season, there are some things where it's also ripping off Star Wars, and it's annoying. I get, right, pay homage to it, pay respects to it and all that, and it's like, yeah, okay, you like them, but at the same time, you kind of got to do your own thing because this has been done before. Why are you just repeating it? And also, you're repeating it in not really a very good way. You're just knocking it off, basically. So that was frustrating still, that it is not entirely trying to be itself, it's trying to be other things, but a little different. But I do like the characters this season because they do flesh them out a bit more. It makes the characters much more relatable, much more likable. One of the big problems with the first season is that it was trying to be two things. It was trying to be a science fiction drama, but also science fiction comedy. I didn't know if it wanted to be a spoof or I didn't know if it wanted to be serious. This season goes much more into the serious area. I think they get the tone much better this time. There's still comedy in there, but it feels much more natural, much more realistic, much more grounded. And I think some of the storytelling this season is better than the first season. Yes, I've already touched on how some of them is much more character focused, but even the ones where it is like the adventure of the week kind of thing, the adventures of the week feel much more important, much more significant than they did in the first season. They've actually got ongoing storylines this season, which they didn't have in the first, really. In the first season, there was only really the thing about the alien race known as the Krill, I believe they were called. That's still in here, but now they've got much more things with the character of, with like the robot species. Now, yeah, not entirely original. Again, it's been done in Star Trek, and it's been done better before, but it works here, it does a good job, and it actually throws in a few surprises with certain characters, changes the status quo a bit. And I'm interested to see where the next season goes, because towards the end of the season, they do change things up. So yeah, that's my review of the Orville. It's okay. Peaky Blinders Season 5. So Peaky Blinders, I'm not in love with this show. I feel like this show is, when it comes to the UK, every year, or I think it's actually more than a year for this season, a big gap. But it seems like everyone's talking about it, it seems like it's the big hit thing, and I just don't get it. Like, yeah, it's not bad, but it's not great either. I'm really interested to see if this show actually has that much appeal outside of the UK, or if it very much is just a UK thing, because I get a feeling it is just a UK thing. I could be wrong though. But Peaky Blinders Season 5, you've now got the main character played by Cillian Murphy is now in politics, but he's also still running the gang, and you've got the Wall Street crash happening, and that impacts them big time because now they're all falling out over the money issues, and you've also got the Billy Boys coming down and being a big significant threat for them. You've also got Sam Claflin coming in as a political threat for them, establishing like the fascist party and so on. And it delves really into politics this season, which of course relates to what's really going on in the world with like stuff in America with like the Nazism and fascists and so on and all that lot. So it does a good job of relating to what's actually going on, and that makes it much more relevant and important. The problem is that 6 episodes, perfect amount of episodes I would say for this type of show, but they're all an hour long, and it feels like they're really dragging them out to fill out that hour. Half the times it also feels like they're putting in over stylization just for the hell of it. So for example, there's a lot of moments where they're slowing things down, trying to be cool, and all that's really happening is someone just walking down the street or something. And yeah, they've got a lot of cool, interesting music and soundtracks and stuff in there, but that's not really what I want to see. I want the story to progress, and it feels like they're stalling and dragging things out so much. Half the time it feels like the show's trying to be a music video rather than a dramatic TV show, and it's annoying. The characters are likeable. I do like the characters. There are particularly some of the side characters. I think Cillian Murphy is one of the least interesting parts of this whole show, to be honest, and he's the main character, so that's a bit of a problem. But great performance from him. I think this season is one of the better ones in recent years, but yeah, I just don't get why everyone loves it quite so much. It feels like it's very similar to like Boardwalk Empire. Boardwalk Empire, the HBO show in America with Steve Buscemi, but that's better than this. It feels like there's constantly some potential there, it's just never getting there because it's trying to be too stylish, too cool and trendy. And yeah, again, I'm not saying it's bad, it's not bad at all, I just think it's alright and I think it is a little on the overrated side. Shameless, Season 8. So Shameless, Season 8, wow, this show's still going on. And this is just Season 8, it's actually on Season 9 or 10 in America or something because we're behind here for some reason. But Season 8, one of the better seasons in recent years. It feels like the characters are repeating themselves, although some of them are now starting to evolve a little bit, I would say, in that they're moving on with their lives, they're actually getting some progress. So the main character, Fiona, for example, is now in real estate, essentially. She's bought her own flats, essentially, apartments, and she's modelling them out and selling them on and making the money, and she's doing pretty well for herself. Well, another character, Ian, is now a paramedic, and he's doing well for himself. So there are some moments where clearly they're moving on, clearly progressing, they're not just repeating themselves exactly. But then there are other moments where Lip, for example, is dealing with his alcoholism, and it feels like we've seen this story before, it feels like it's been done before, both in the show and in other shows. It's not to say that it's bad, but it just feels like, right, get to the point already. We've done this before. And the problem with Shameless is that these are, by definition, because of what they do and what they say and how they act and behave, these are bad people. And yet the show makes them likeable. And it's really tough because you've got characters who are essentially horrible, nasty criminals, very selfish individuals, it seems, at times. And the show's trying to make them sympathetic, it's trying to make them relatable, and it's tough because it's also treating it as a joke. It's like, and it's almost trying to justify their actions and behaviours, but at the end of the day, whether they've got good reasons for what they're doing or not, they're still doing bad things. So that makes it tough to watch, it makes it tough to relate to them. So I always remember one of the earlier seasons where they had like this really innocent woman just flat out kill someone, and then they treated it like a joke, and then they never even mentioned it again. It's like, ooh, no, that's not okay. And even though she killed someone who was basically a bad person, it still wasn't right. But yeah, they keep doing these things where they make the characters who you like do really horrible, bad stuff. And yeah, it's just something that never really sits well with me with this show. And of course it relates to the whole point of the show, that is Shameless. The name of the title gives it away that these characters are shameless. They do bad things, but they're not necessarily bad people. It depends on your viewpoint, I suppose. One of the things I really liked about this season is Frank. It feels like they're actually finally doing something different with Frank, to an extent. So this season, he comes back and he's got, whether he's on drugs or whatever, we don't really know. It never really delves into that. It's suspected that he is on drugs, and that's what's happening. But he's basically becomes a normal person, a respectable member of society, sends his son to school and so on, he gets himself a job, becomes a manager really quickly, and yeah, it turns out he can actually be a genuinely nice, real person. And it feels like they're really exploring that element of his character a bit more, and it feels like they've got a point to say with this storyline that is going on, how it is a case of, hey, the government, the community and so on doesn't always treat people who are doing well, who are doing everything right. It doesn't always give them what they deserve. And yeah, problem is that by the end of the season, he's just the same old Frank that he was in the past seasons. He's getting drunk, he's drinking. They also seem to forget the fact that he shouldn't really be drinking because he was nearly dead like a couple of seasons ago because of it. But yeah, that's one of the things you just kind of got to pretend didn't happen, I suppose. But yeah, it feels like while they're making progress in some regards, they're also backstepping in other regards, and it's really frustrating. But this season of Shameless, one of the better ones in recent years. And yeah, I believe the next one is the final one for Fiona. Fiona, my favourite character in the show. I think she's a really good character, played by Emmy Rossum. I think she's a really underappreciated actor, and I think she should have been nominated for a bunch of awards for this show, but she hasn't been. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the show deals with her exit and what happens when she leaves, because I don't think the show will work quite as well without her. Although one of the things the show does really well is introducing new characters and adding them into the mix, and it's very seamless. And because it is from the makers of ER done the same thing as well, really well. So yeah, interesting to see where this goes. Final show I'm going to talk about today is Suits Season 9, the final season of Suits. It's 10 episodes, so one of the shorter seasons of Suits. It's good. It's actually one of the better seasons in quite a while, to be honest. Because they're heading into it knowing it's the final season, they can establish the overall storyline, they know, and you can feel right from word go that, right, they're in the end game now. And Harvey and Donna are now in a relationship this season. They've also got a new villain played by Denise Crosby. She's a great addition in there, but she does feel like she's just there because they need some sort of antagonistic figure in there. She does feel a little forced into the situation at times. But Katherine Heigl is there as well, one of the newer characters introduced last season. She's really kind of underutilised this season, I would say. They bring Mike back for a couple of episodes, that's good. You had to bring him back, really. He was the main character. When he left the show kind of like had to reshift what its focus was. I would argue that Suits should have ended like 3 or 4 seasons ago. The whole point of Suits was that this was a guy who was lying about his whole life and existence, essentially. And then when everyone figured it out, that kind of should have been the end point. But no, it continued on after that, and it kind of lost its plot a bit. But this season, it's all about establishing what the character's going to be up to in the future, what's going on with their lives. So you've got characters who are moving on, characters who are getting together, characters who are having children, and it does a good job of giving each one of the characters some sort of payoff and send-off. Even some of the supporting characters who you probably wouldn't expect to get some sort of payoff. So, for example, Lewis's therapist, who's been in the past 2 seasons, bizarrely, he ends up getting some closure in this season, and it's really interesting and good how they do that. The finale is a good episode. I think if you are a long-time Suits fan, this is a season you should watch. One of the things that I really liked about this season is the comedy. Suits has always had bits of comedy in here, but there's one episode in particular where Lewis Litt gets to feel what it's like to be Harvey Specter, and it's hilarious. And Lewis Litt, by the way, an amazing character, brilliant character, who, again, I think is an underutilised character in this show, played brilliantly by Rick Hoffman. I would very much like to see some sort of spin-off with his character or something, but yeah, great character. It's saying something when Harvey Specter, the main character, now it seems that Mike is gone, he's probably the least interesting part of this season. And I think that's because 9 seasons on, they've kind of run out of things to do with him. So they've dragged out the relationship with Donna now to the point where it doesn't really, now that they're finally together, it feels like, right, you're together, so what? It doesn't really have the payoff that they wanted, I think. But they do get some closure, they do build up to something towards the finale. The overall story this season is essentially Denise Crosby's character comes in to clean up the firm and to basically say, right, you need to get your act together, you need to play things by the book from now on. And that really does give them something to deal with. The fact that they have constantly got to do the stuff that they do while also sticking to the rules and avoiding her character and playing things by the book. But yeah, good season, good finale, good ending to a show that probably should have ended 4 or 5 years ago. And those are all the reviews I'm going to talk about today. I hope you've enjoyed them. If you have, subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. I'm losing my voice, so leave comments and feedback down below. Let me know what you thought of all these shows. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. Until next time though, thanks for watching.